Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on the IE Brown Executive MBA program. My name is Joel Revel. I'm the Deputy Dean of Academic and Student Affairs, and I oversee all of our master's programs, including, in particular, the professional master's programs, including the Executive MBA. Today, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about who I am. Uh, and then I'd like to talk you through the program in general and spend particularly some time on the return on investment of this program or, any advanced degree that you might pursue. And then I'm going to leave a lot of time for questions. At the end, my colleague Emma Lipinski will be helping out managing questions. So you can, I believe, put things in the chat and she will um, highlight them for me and call my attention to them, and I'll be happy to answer whatever I can. So for starters, who am I? I just told you I'm a dean at Brown. I've been at the university for about 15 years. My background is actually in French history. I started as a French historian and then became a dean in the dean of the faculty's office, which I did for about 12 years. And then, like many of you, I decided to kind of pivot my career a little bit. And I enrolled in 2023 in the IE Brown Executive MBA, which was a big step for me. It was not something I'd expected to do. It was scary. It was strange to be back in the classroom on the other side of the classroom. I'm used to being a professor. I was not used to being a student. Um, and it was an immensely transformative experience. It was fantastic, and it helped me shift roles into the position I'm in now, where I have much more broader strategic oversight of our programs, budgetary oversight, and I'm leading several teams that support students. So all of the skills that are involved in that kind of work, I got from the IE Brown MBA. So what is the MBA? Well, it's a program that's existed for 16 years, actually. Now we're in our 16th cohort, that was founded from a vision that a couple of Brown faculty had while talking to colleagues at IE. The Brown faculty at the time were actually an engineer and a humanities professor who worked on the history of opera. And they thought that MBAs had a lot to learn from the humanities and that there might be a real appetite for fusing the two. Over the last 15 years, we've shifted the focus of the program somewhat, but kept what makes it unique. So now you'll find a program that is much more oriented toward macroeconomics, global political challenges, and emerging challenges in the workplace. So it retains the interest in the deep research of the social sciences that you'll find at Brown. But we've tried to make it more and more relevant to all business executives, not just those who are seeking sort of a return to humanistic scholarship. The program has developed a worldwide community, and I'll talk more later about the alumni network, which I think is one of the most powerful parts of this program. And the connection with IE has deepened over time, and Brown's engagement has deepened over time. For the first 4 years, the program was an IE degree with the Brown certificate, and now it is a truly joint program. So what you're getting with this program is two prestigious and well-known institutions. Uh, Speaking from the North American perspective, obviously Brown is extremely well known as a member of the Ivy League. It's a school that is over 250 years old and has an incredible network of alumni and friends around the country and around the world. And IE is a global upstart in Europe. It's very well known in Europe. It's a top ranked business school. I'm always impressed with the number of people who recognize IE even before Brown when I'm traveling in Europe. And it's a real hotbed of pedagogical innovation. I'll talk a little bit more about how impressed I am with the faculty at IE later in this presentation. There's going to be a few quotes that I'm going to flash up here in the slides. There's not really much to talk to in the quotes, but I'll try and give you a second to read them. I will also mention, as a little plug, we're having an open day in September where Tim James, who graduated in 2020 and went on to found his own company out of the MBA in conjunction with a couple of classmates, he's going to be speaking on an alumni panel at our open day. So if you can make it, you'll get a chance to meet him in person. So one thing that I think is really special about this program is that the degree you receive is from both institutions. You will be a full alumni with full degree, all of the privileges pertaining to the degree from both Brown and IE. That means you'll have a degree that's formally recognized the world over, and that will help you through doors in North America, Europe, Latin America, and elsewhere. So now I want to turn to what the program is. This program is relatively unusual in part for its length. This is a 15-month program, which makes it shorter and more intense than most other executive MBAs. That means that you're going to be working really hard for all of the 15 months. In fact, the program is probably designed to give you more work than you can possibly handle. And part of the learning experience is figuring out how to do what you need to do to succeed, and how to shortcut the rest to a certain extent. Now, I say that as an academic, as a scholar, I tried to do absolutely all the reading. I'd say did about 95% of it, but it's probably impossible by design. So it's a really intensive program. However, one of the advantages is that its intensiveness is structured in a more flexible way than most other executive MBAs. So we have residential sessions that last between 1 and 2 weeks in Madrid, Providence, and Cape Town. Those residential sessions will be sort of, you'll block them out of your time. You'll take time off work. I mean, obviously, if you have emergency meetings, we understand there are always private rooms available to do work in. But essentially, you're going to be taking those 2 weeks to intensively work on the program. We're going to pack in as much as we can in those sessions. You'll be in class, 9, 10 hours a day. You'll be working with your teams outside of class. And then in between those intensive residential sessions, you'll be online. And the online periods are busy, but they're a little bit more calm and they're structured to allow you to handle your normal work, family, home responsibilities. What that means is there are really two formats for online learning. One is live video conferences. Some faculty will choose to essentially hold class as though it were a class, but online. For those classes, they're always offered twice, usually once in the morning, once in the sort of later afternoon, both to allow people in different time zones to attend, but also understanding that you may have immovable commitments at any given time of the day. So this gives you a couple of ways to attend. The other format for online learning is asynchronous forums. And this is one example of the pedagogical innovation and quality of IE. As a Brown professor, I was a little skeptical of these coming in because we're trained to think that the only way that you can get a great education is if you sit in the classroom and listen to me talk. Now, that's a great way to stroke my own ego, but it's not the only way to learn. The asynchronous online forums are actually really fantastically constructed. They're essentially from Tuesday to Thursday afternoon or Friday. And usually what the faculty will do, you'll have assigned reading, videos to watch, et cetera, in advance. So you'll have a lot of material to talk about. And then you'll come in and the faculty member will toss out a question or two to start. And people will hop on, answer. Optimally, you'll be responding to each other's answers and developing a conversation over the course of the day. You're normally limited to only sort of like five-ish posts during the week. So you have to think carefully about what you want to post. And the word count is limited. So you really have to think carefully about how you want to use your word count. But what you're doing is generating an online conversation, and the faculty member is then coming in usually once or twice a day and redirecting, commenting, adding more material. I think when these work best, the faculty member might start out with, I don't know, a asking you to, analyze the income statement of a company that is a target for a buyout in the morning. And you'll start talking about that. The faculty member might, once they think that the conversation has sort of run its course, then add more information. Give you a news article about the company that changes how you read the financial statement, or, you know, give you the balance sheets of the company. Find other ways to kind of inject information in the conversation and keep it going. And that conversation is going to go over the course of the week. So anyway, those are essentially the two online options. One entirely at your discretion in terms of what time you're engaging. The other offered twice a day, once during the week. The curriculum is primarily organized around three big pillars. I'm going to go out of order here, but business acumen is mostly handled by IE, although in fact the game theory class and the financial management class are taught by fantastic Brown professors who are some of the best in the world. Um, Most of the other business acumen courses are top IE, so financial accounting, cost control, scale ups, marketing. These are all IE faculty. And one that's not on here, but probably should be, is entrepreneurial management for executives, which is one of the really core classes. It's one of the longer classes that you'll take. And it teaches you both ways to think about startups, but also a set of frameworks and tools that you'll use in South Africa and in your capstone project, both of which I'll talk about in a minute. Strategic foresight is more or less split between Brown and IE. Here you'll learn many of the basic tools of business strategy. You'll take classes in AI and how to implement AI in your business in a thoughtful and human-centered way. And you'll learn about the macroeconomics and political trends I talked about earlier. So, how does deglobalization affect business decisions at an international level? What can you expect of increasing tariffs in terms of their impact on currency exchange rates or inflation? Questions like this will be addressed in your strategic foresight classes. And then finally, workplace impact and leadership. These are more of your sort of what you might call soft skill classes. So things like leading teams and organizations, how to build teams, how to work with troublesome but talented employees, how to think about incentive schemes and what different incentive structures will do to change the way that your business operates. All of these pillars are kind of tied together through the Global Trend Seminar Series, as well as through the Capstone Project. So the Global Trend Seminar Series, I love this class. It's built of 20 individual lectures by preeminent scholars from around the world, not just, many of them are Brown or IE faculty, but many of them are faculty at Yale, Harvard, the Federal Reserve, other institutions, people who are not academics, but in government or in business. All of them generally deal with macroeconomics and kind of the future of the workplace and work. And you tie them together by writing a paper in November or December, drawing on 4 or 5 of the different lectures to sort of pull together a vision of the emerging trends in the business environment built around this class. I want to talk very briefly about the immersion in South Africa. That's not really the core of today's talk, but I'm so excited about it that I want to tell you about it. Excuse me. I have to apologize. I'm getting over a virus that laid me out for about 2 weeks, so my voice is not 100%. So the South Africa program is something that we've been doing for about 10 years, and we've always engaged deeply in the particular history, sociology, and politics of the country. We're changing it this year in a way that I think is going to make it more exciting and more relevant for you. Um, we're organizing it around what we're calling 5 verticals. In your year, there could be 6 verticals, there could be 7, it depends. There'll be one vertical per team. And the idea behind each vertical is that they will allow you to see an industry opportunity or an opportunity for engagement in an emerging market, sort of from soup to nuts. So, to take one example, energy and transportation. You might, if you're on the energy and transportation team, start by going to the townships on the edges of Cape Town, where many of the people in South Africa and in Cape Town in particular live. So here we're going to start thinking about human capital. Who are the workers and who are potentially the clients or purchasers of energy and transportation services? You'll meet with perhaps a small entrepreneur who's selling access to solar panels to people living in informal settlements who don't otherwise have access to power. You'll meet some of the people living in those informal settlements and talk to them about their access to energy and transportation and how that affects, in turn, their access to education and employment. Many of them have to travel hours to get into central Cape Town, a trip that will take you 15 or 20 minutes in a minivan in order to work. So how does that impact the efficiency of labor? Uh, how does how do frequent brownouts in the country impact the efficiency of education or labor for the people who are working in the country? You might meet with a nonprofit in one of these townships who's working on dealing with problems of transportation or energy. Then on another day, you might go and meet with the power company for the Western Cape, and hear about challenges that they have with power production and maintenance of infrastructure, and be able to think about what it means to do business in a country with significant infrastructural problems. You might meet with an international company who is doing business in South Africa and learn about the broad-based Black business empowerment law, which requires that a certain percentage of any international company doing business in South Africa be owned by Black South Africans. How does that affect company strategy and decision making? How do companies engage with the kinds of clients that you met in the townships of Langa and Kailicha? How do they engage with people who live in the wealthier parts of Cape Town? So you'll see this entire vertical from top to bottom, and then you'll work on a project essentially on an analysis of entering this market. If you were a an energy company in a relevant sector of energy, what would you think about? What would you advise your company owners, your stockholders, your bosses before entering South Africa? So I'm really excited about this. I'm particularly excited about the new professor who's teaching this course. Her name is Robin Kurnow. She was an anchor for CNN South Africa for about 20 years, and she knows absolutely everybody in the country, and she's going to make it a really fantastic experience. So let me talk to you a little bit about career outcomes and return on your investment. The first thing I want to say is that the return on your investment for any executive master's program at Brown or anywhere else is going to be primarily what you make of it. Most people who have seen this program really dive in, put in a huge amount of work, and also put a lot of work into building community within their cohort. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've seen in this program. The cohorts are tightly bonded. I'm still in a WhatsApp group with my cohort where we exchange, you know, anywhere from like 3 to 30 messages a day, but there are always communications flying among the 40 or so of us. And we're always there to help each other out. And anytime I need advice on a business issue, I have folks in all kinds of sectors in like 15 different countries who are happy to help. At Brown and IE, we think about one of the best ways to make sure that you can implement what you learn in the program, to be learning by doing. So there are a series of these opportunities built throughout the program. Um, the first is probably the entrepreneurial management for executives, which I mentioned before, um, where you will spend, I think, about 15 weeks working on analyzing markets, analyzing business opportunities, analyzing customer bases, and thinking about different models for solving for problems. Those are fantastic models to use anywhere in your work. I'm about the furthest thing from an entrepreneur. One of these dirty secrets of academics is that we enter this field because it's safe. Nobody else would give up money for tenure, besides somebody who's pretty profoundly conservative about finances. And yet, I find myself using models from the entrepreneurial management course all the time in my everyday work because entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship is an increasingly vital part of any company. We all have to evolve in order to survive. Next, I already mentioned also the Global Trend Seminar Series. Here you're going to be engaging with top scholars from around the world on emerging issues and thinking about how to make those emerging issues relevant to your work and your lives. Navigating complexity in emerging markets is the course that's related to Cape Town. So you're going to end up in Cape Town applying the lessons that you've learned, not just from this course, but very intentionally also from the Entrepreneurial Management for Executives course, your strategy course, your two macroeconomics courses, your course on the sociology of deglobalization. These are all going to come up in South Africa, and you're going to put that knowledge to work. And by doing so, you're going to remember it far better than if you just took a course, wrote a paper on it, and then moved on to your next class. And then finally, the key reflection project is essentially a capstone where you and one or two of your classmates will solve a problem. And this can be anything from a somewhat traditional academic paper that solves, for instance, a structural problem. This can be a pretty major structural problem, or it can be something within your workplace, or it can be an entrepreneurial opportunity. And so, for example, the capstone that I worked on was actually the emerging business of a friend and colleague called Mindful AI, where she has a daughter who's neurodivergent, who's wonderful, smart, energetic, and is going to have a fantastic career. But my friend is worried about how her daughter will essentially communicate across neurodivergent, neurotypical divides in the workplace. And so she worked on an AI-driven, very personalized solution that helps both neurotypical and neurodivergent people assess their communication, be it written, oral, or video, and think about a facial expression, turns of phrase, idioms, etc., might be perceived by other people and allows them to tweak their communication as they see fit. So it doesn't rewrite their communication, it doesn't rethink their communication, but it just kind of helps them understand somebody else who thinks and communicates differently. She ended up quitting her job at Amazon Web Services and is now pursuing this business full time. So that's a great example of putting the learning from the program into practice in a super effective and practical way. These are just a few businesses that have been founded by IE Brown alumni, often during the program. It's a very partial list. You can tell how partial it is because two of them were members of my KRP team. Mindful AI, I already mentioned, and Breakstone Unlimited. Below that is a friend of mine who came into the program working in a family law firm, very successful, hated what he was doing, threw himself into the program. And then on the other end of it, he decided to build a business using what he'd learned in the program, helping folks who had started their own businesses and very successfully grown to a certain extent based on their area of expertise skill, but who lacked fundamental knowledge of how to operate a business. So, what he does, just to give you one example, he has worked with a company that trains voice actors in Hollywood. I think this is a connection he made through another classmate in the IE MBA. That company has like several $1 million in revenue. It's been quite successful for 20 years, but it's hitting a wall where, in order to expand further, it needs more rationalized and professionalized operations and finance. And so my colleague Reza has gone in and works with them, sets up structures, operates as a kind of fractional COO or CFO for 6 months or a year, and gets them on their feet and then sends them on their way to the next stage of their growth. It's just one example of some of the businesses founded. I also wanted to talk about Reza for a second because I started this section by saying that the return on investment of any program that you join is going to be based on what you put into it. And he's a great example. He threw himself into the program like nobody I've ever seen. He actually did do all of the reading, which I don't know if anybody else has ever done. He also threw himself into socializing, and he was out until 3 in the morning. He was doing everything, and he graduated from the program, and he sort of heard this resounding silence and wondered to himself, "What, what now? Like, I've got this Ivy League degree, I have all of this knowledge. Why isn't something happening?" And it took him a few months to sort of think through and realize that he had to make it happen. He had to draw on the connections that he'd made in the program, and he had to draw on the knowledge from the program to build his next step. And once he kind of realized that and took the next step, his career took off, and his company has now allowed him to quit his law firm. I think he's fully replaced his income from the law firm and then some, and he's getting ready to start do some hiring and actually expand into being a multi-person firm. Just another quote here. And while we're on the topic of return on investment, you can see here, these are some of the companies just from the last like 2 or 3 years worth of cohorts. We've had folks working. So this gives you a sense of the kind of breadth. We have a lot of people from entertainment and sports. We have a lot of people from pharma and health. In fact, the guy who's pictured there is the chief of staff to the head scientist for one of the major pharmaceuticals in Boston. Um, we have a lot of people from transportation, aviation, senior executives in New Zealand, Mexican, and Spanish airlines just in the last 2 years. And a lot of people from consulting, so you can see EY is there. But there's a really broad array of folks that you're going to meet and become friends and colleagues with. Um, According to our last survey data, 58% of graduates saw their salaries increased by over 40% after graduation. 30% held C-suite or executive like AVP, VP roles. 22% founded businesses, and 90% of them said that they directly applied the skills that they got in the program to their work lives. The last thing I want to mention is the alumni network. So this is one of your most powerful tools. This slide's actually a bit outdated. I believe IE now has closer to 85,000 alumni, and Brown has over 120,000 alumni, 125 maybe. Um, these are folks who are happy to help you. Through Brown, you'll have access to a platform called Brown Connect Plus, which allows you to look up either EMBA alumni and reach out to them, or any Brown alumni by the region that they work in, their location, or by their area of work, their field. You can reach out to them through the platform or through LinkedIn. And in my experience, they are usually really happy to help. So it gives you essentially a Rolodex of close to 200,000 people who are in senior leadership positions around the world, who are looking to help you. So finally, next steps. If you decide to apply, the application requires two personal statements or essays. They're about a page long. They're not that hard. Two letters of recommendation from professional colleagues, your transcripts, and an interview with one of our recruitment counselors. So they'll just sort of talk to you about why you want to join the program, what your background is, et cetera. We do not require GMAT scores. And I should maybe mention this is a program where you will get the hardcore business knowledge that you will in any MBA, and you're going to have to do some math classes, but the framework is there to help you succeed. So I say this as somebody who hadn't really done any math probably since high school. As I said, I'm a historian, so I came into financial accounting, which was the first class I took, a little bit terrified. I got, I think, a 3 out of 10 on the first quiz, and I was like, "Man, is this whole program going to end for me before it even starts?" No, the faculty member who teaches that course is wonderful. He does a 10-day boot camp before the class starts where he tries to get everyone up to speed. And he's happy to work with you closely and individually to get to the point where you understand the material. For those of you who have never done accounting, it's just a new language. And for me, it took a couple of weeks. And then once I kind of got how the language worked, everything clicked and kind of fell into place. It was like, okay, I can do this. This is not that hard. So don't be too scared of the math. Our next priority review deadline for applications is coming up on Monday, I believe, July 13th. So um, it would behoove you to get applications in by then if you can. Final applications are due January 18th, but please send us your application before that. Nobody wants to have a million applications to look at, and everybody's going to be happier. And who knows, maybe there'll be more financial aid available if you apply earlier. So thank you. With that, Emma, do we have any questions? Emma, are you there?
Yes, so it does look like we have a couple questions in, and just a reminder for all of you on the call, to go down and use the Q&A box to insert any other questions that you may have. But starting with the first question here, what are the most important factors looked at when reviewing an application?
It's a good question. I think, the first sort of factor is just going to be, do you meet the basic criteria? Um, so we normally look for folks with about 10 years of increasing responsibility in their industry. Leading teams, leading other team members is a useful but not essential qualification. Um, a bachelor's degree is essential. The 10 years, don't treat that. If you're at 8 or 9 years, I would encourage you to apply. We will consider less than 10, but we do like to have this be a mid-career program. We want to make sure that everybody can contribute and sort of discuss at the same level of having a certain amount of kind of leadership experience. Then we look at your academic background. Optimally, you did pretty well at undergrad. But the way I think about this is if I see somebody who struggled in their undergraduate years and then has had a really great, clear upward trajectory in their business life, to me, that says that they've, either they had some trouble while they were in college or they were bored or whatever else, and they clearly have shown that they can function at a high level elsewhere. That's okay. We look at essays then to think about how to compose the class. So optimally, we want a good balance in terms of gender. We want a lot of diversity in the student body in all kinds of ways. We want folks from different parts of the world so that you bring the experience of your business culture into classes about how business operates differently in different parts of the world. We want people from different industries so that we can hear examples of, the advisability of taking on debt in airlines versus entertainment versus tech. So we're looking for balance there. I think those are kind of the main pieces that we look at in essays.
Thank you. So the next question in here, is the course load manageable with a full-time job?
Absolutely. It is designed, all of us have full-time jobs. In fact, normally we require that you be employed in order to be in the program. I think we maybe have very occasionally made exceptions to that, but this is intended to be an executive program for people who are fully employed. As I said, it's challenging. I don't want to make it sound easy, but it absolutely is designed to fit in with your job and your life.
Thank you. The next question in here, and I'm going to put in a last call for any other questions. So if you have them, please submit them now to the Q&A. How do you feel the program supported you throughout the process of the KRP as it progressed?
Yeah, so I think pretty well. The program will assign you, well, you'll find an external advisor for your KRP, and then the program will assign you an internal advisor. And usually that internal advisor is somebody who's done something kind of similar. It can be one of our faculty, but it can also be an outside advisor. So just to give you an example, because I was working on a KRP on a startup, we were assigned a Spanish entrepreneur who had founded a couple of companies. So he didn't necessarily know the material of our startup all that well, but he knew the process of startups, and he was able to advise us on how to think about, you know, uh, customer solutions, how to think about funding, how to think about planning for scale up at the very beginning, all those kinds of things that we could then build into making our KRP smarter. And then, as I said, you'll also have an outside advisor. So in our case, we found a scholar who works on artificial intelligence assistance for disability issues. So she was very much, her focus had been on dyslexia and dysgraphia, and we were working on neurodivergence. So worked on sort of a smaller portion of the larger problem that we were working on, but she was a fantastic resource. So you'll meet with both of your advisors several times over the course of working on your KRP. The density of those meetings is kind of up to you and your team, and it will depend on what you need. And then more generally, the program and both universities are there to support you. So program leadership will be checking in. There are scaffolded deadlines for the KRPs to make sure that you're moving along. And just speaking for Brown in general, Brown's ethos is one of community over competition. So it's a place where people really care for each other and where the university has invested a lot of resources and thought into supporting all of its students to make sure that you succeed.
Thank you. And we have two more questions here. Can you share examples of real-world consulting projects or business challenges that students work on?
Yes. Sorry, this might take me a second to think about. So obviously I've talked about my KRP. Um, if you come to Tim James's talk, he'll talk about he actually started a consulting firm. There's a graduate who had worked at UBS for a long time, who's now doing a fantastic project tied to South Africa that I assume is connected to his experience in the program in South Africa, where he's essentially operating a fund that manages uh, currency risk for smaller nonprofits and maybe some social good oriented for-profits working in South Africa. So if you, for instance, if you have a grant or government funding or something, any kind of set funding to accomplish a goal in South Africa, one of your biggest risks is that currency fluctuation will make it impossible to do what you set out to do when you got the grant by the time you actually try and do it. And he has a large enough fund that he can essentially manage that currency risk for nonprofits to allow them to plan exactly what it's going to cost them to do what they set out to do. So to me, that's a great example of the kind of work that's come out of this program. Yeah, if you want to email me offline, if whoever asked that question, if you have a particular industry or area that you're interested in, I'd be happy to give you more examples or to put you in touch with some of our alumni in that industry who can talk to you about how they implemented the program in their own consulting and business work.
Thank you. And the last question in here, for professionals in smaller sectors, for example, the energy sector, oil and gas, renewables, how has the EMBA helped graduates move into broader business, commercial, or executive leadership positions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have to apologize. I'm not going to have specifics for you because I normally I'm actually a couple layers up in Brown's administration, but we are hiring a new program director who is the one who's like really working with the students on a day-to-day level. So I'm sort of filling in for that position right now. But I will tell you, in terms of energy, um, we have a recent student who manages um, essentially finance organizes bonds and loans for the Mexican petrochemical company. So he's the one who goes out and organizes financing for like buying a new deep sea oil rig. Be happy to put you in touch with him to talk about how it's changed his work. We have somebody who works for renewable electricity in Spain. I believe it's Spain. I could put you in touch with. We've had a number of people in the energy sector in recent years. So, I'd have to put you in touch with those folks to tell you how they've used this as a platform to expand their roles. But it is definitely a sector that we have a lot of student interest coming from.
Thank you. And it looks like there are two more questions in here, so we'll go through those quickly. Does this program offer networking or facilities to perform in the sports business and for sports agents in particular? And then there's a second part of this question. Can you tell more about the clubs around the world? Thank you.
Yeah, the clubs is gonna be a little tough. So let me start with that one. Brown has clubs around the world, and IE has clubs around the world. They're general, so they're not specific to any given program, but you are, as an alumni, you're welcome to join any club. I mean, I get emails all the time from the Brown Providence Boston Club. And then at that point, it becomes a networking opportunity that you can take advantage of as you see fit. So, there are with 200,000 alumni, you can imagine that there are clubs in most major cities, particularly most major cities in the US, but also because of IE across Europe. You'll have access to any of those, and you can go. They run events all the time. The Brown Club, I get invitations to go to networking meetups, to go to classes on everything from like um, well, I'm going to be lecturing a couple times on French history in France for a Brown Club event in September, but there's also classes on like making cheese boards. I don't know. There's all kinds of things. Um, and then in terms of sports in particular, we have some fantastic alumni in this area. We have a current student who is in the NBA. She does. I'm not remembering off the top of my head what she does in the NBA, but she has a fairly senior role in the NBA administration. It's an outward facing role. It's something having to do with like uh, reaching out to a specific section of the fan base. We have a former NFL player who started his own sports marketing agency, who's an alum. We have the former head of diversity and inclusion for Nike, who's both an alum and teaches a class in the program, who now has his own consulting firm. So really like a lot of the sort of sports entertainment nexus is the way that I think about it within this program, because for a lot of professional athletes or people involved in athletics, the skills and the networks become really similar. So a lot of them are both involved in the same kinds of marketing, the same kinds of PR and communications issues at a really high and complicated level, and the same kinds of working with employees and constituencies with an enormous reach and power. I mean, you can imagine working with athletes and actors is one of the hardest things you can do. Sorry, this is a little tangential to your question, but it's a funny story to me. I don't know if anybody of you have seen The Studio. Is it The Studio? I think it's The Studio, the new Seth Rogen TV show. It's hilarious if you haven't seen it. It's about a studio executive who's constantly like getting himself into trouble as he tries to make suggestions to actors or to the studio head or whatever, and just getting in like ridiculous situations. So one of the studio heads who greenlit and oversees that show is a guy named Kevin Beggs, who's the creative director for Lionsgate. Kevin is a graduate of our program. And Kevin was telling me how ways in which I don't want to give away too many details, but to avoid spoiling the plot or to give away things Kevin has told me in confidence, but ways in which Kevin has tried to engage with Seth Rogen and with the show have ended up in the show in kind of an embarrassing fashion for Kevin. So it's just an example of like the power that your quote unquote employees have in both Hollywood and sports, and the ways that thinking that the program will help you thinking about managing communications, managing people, and managing teams becomes really vital in those kinds of super high impact, super public industries.
Thank you. And another question here. Have you had anyone in the hospitality industry?
Yes, definitely. We had a year or two ago, we had a woman who was in the South African hospitality industry who was like a director level at one of the big reserves in South Africa where people go for safaris. Um, we have somebody now who's he's from Canada and is a senior executive at a hospitality company, I believe run out of Toronto. Um, so working on, he's just looking to make a move up within that industry. Um, that's the two that come to mind just from the last couple of cohorts. But actually one other. We have a graduate uh, from Mexico City who started out in graphic design, um, then co-started a ramen restaurant with his wife, and as he was the sort of interior designer for the restaurant, and as he did that, he ended up building out both a restaurant and construction empire, and he now has something like 7 restaurants in Mexico and a construction company that does a lot of work and a design company that does a lot of work on his own and other people's restaurants. So those are just a few examples of some of the hospitality folks we have.
Thank you. And the last question in here, what advice do you have for a prospective student looking to apply?
Well, I'm not sure if that's a question about how to apply or how to think about, entering a program in general. I think the first thing I would do is, go to these events, talk to people, reach out, maybe talk to alumni and get a sense of like how people feel about the program, how people feel about the program a year or two after they did it. Did it give them what they hoped for? Did they feel like they grew over the course of the program? And think about your life. Think about what kind of a program is going to work best for you. Obviously, I want all of you at the IE Brown program, but for some people, an every weekend or every other weekend program like MIT's is going to work better than an occasional 2-week intensive. I hope for a lot of people, our model is going to work better for you. Think about what you are most interested in and what you care about. You're going to get the finance, accounting, business skills from this program. That's not all you're going to get. So if that's all you want, you should probably go to like a math or finance intensive program. If you're interested in macroeconomics and global politics and how to think about, well, one of my favorite sort of comments from one of our faculty is anybody who goes to any MBA program is going to be able to use a SWOT analysis, do a Porter's five forces analysis, et cetera. Like all these models and tools you're going to get anywhere. Um, that gives you no advantage. You need to figure out what's going to give you an advantage in business. Now, I think that the two things that our program offers are a real depth of understanding of economics, politics, sociology, and culture in a way that will help you kind of see beneath, behind, below the news and understand how current events are going to affect the future of your business. And I think this program gives you a connection to the real research that underlies a lot of the stuff that you read in business classes. So, the fact is, a lot of business programs, including some of our classes, are built around like Harvard Business Review articles, Sloan management articles, Kellogg management articles, et cetera. These are great journals and they're really useful, but they're not peer review. And at best, what they are is popularizations of scholarship that goes on at all of our universities, um, quietly in the economics, sociology, political science, cognitive science departments. I think what our program gives you that some others don't is an understanding of the relationship between that peer review, deep scholarship, and what you're reading in The Economist, in Harvard Business Review, in the Wall Street Journal. It allows you to say, hey, I'm really interested in, how inflation is going to affect trade with, whatever, Pacific Rim countries. Um, I now know how to hop into IE and Brown's libraries using my alumni access, what journals to go to, and how to read the underlying scholarship that journalists are kind of all sort of parroting in the same way, and how to get behind that and really understand what's happening. So that's the advantage of our program. If that's something you're interested in, I think it's the right program for you. Again, if you're interested in a super quantitative program, there are probably better options. So figure out what it is that you want and figure out what fits with your life. And then talk to alumni, talk to the faculty, talk to the administrators in the program, and figure out what makes sense for you.
Thank you. And that is all of our questions. In the
Well,
chat, I did put in our email address. So if anybody has any questions following this session, please give us an email at professional@brown.edu. And then I did include links to our two upcoming events. So if you are interested, please check them out at the links in the chat.
thank you, Emma.
And I think that we're all set. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.